Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Healing Growth, the place where we try to untangle all those messy but fascinating threads of relationships.
Absolutely.
I'm Lucky, and as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Mika.
Always a pleasure to be here, Lucky. And hey to everyone listening out there.
So speaking of milestones today, we're tackling one that can, I think, really make your heart race and maybe even your palms sweat a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, I love you.
Mm.
And we found a source that really unpacks what those three little words actually signify and why timing can honestly be such a minefield.
Yeah, it really is a minefield.
It's a phrase loaded with meaning, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely goes way beyond those initial butterflies, that's for sure.
Totally. The source makes this point that really resonated with me. It's like saying, I love you isn't just a feeling, it's a sort of promise.
A promise.
Yeah, it's like a promise to see the other person fully, flaws and all, to actively want their happiness.
Right.
And it's really like stepping onto a new level of commitment.
I think what's so fascinating about that is that it implies a choice. A conscious decision to be with someone despite knowing that they're not perfect.
Right.
It goes beyond that infatuation phase where everything's rosy and, speaks to a much deeper understanding of who that person truly is.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about all these questions that you should probably be asking yourself before you even think about dropping the L-bomb.
Oh, like what?
Well, have you seen this person under stress?
Oh, that's a good one.
Do you know how they handle conflict? Have you even had those deep late night conversations about, values and life goals and all that?
You're hitting all the important points for sure. And our source highlights these three key signs that you might be ready to say, I love you.
Okay.
And knowing your partner on that really deep level, like we've been talking about, is definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it also emphasizes, having weathered some storms together and making sure that your motives for saying it are actually pure.
Okay, so let's kind of break those down.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've talked about really knowing someone beyond just the surface level. So what about navigating challenges as a couple?
Yeah.
What does that tell us about a relationship?
Well, I think we can both agree that relationships are never always smooth sailing.
Oh, for sure.
There's disagreements and disappointments and even external pressures. These are just inevitable.
Absolutely.
But it's how you navigate those challenges together that really reveals the strength of the bond.
So it's less about never fighting and more about how you fight.
Exactly. Do you approach conflict with respect and a willingness to understand each other's perspective?
Right.
Are you able to support each other through those really tough times? These are just crucial indicators of a healthy and resilient relationship. One where saying, I love you, actually carries genuine weight.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what about the source's point on motives? Why is that so important?
Well, because saying, I love you shouldn't be about manipulation.
Right.
Or obligation or filling a void in your own life.
That's not about you.
Exactly. It loses its authenticity if it's driven by anything other than a genuine desire to express how you feel.
So no saying it just to hear it back.
Nope.
Or to try and speed up the relationship.
No, not at all. It's about respecting both your own feelings and the other person's space to arrive at that point organically.
Yeah.
Putting pressure on someone or saying it out of a sense of duty really diminishes the power and meaning of those words.
Okay, so we've talked about some signs that you might be ready, but I think we all know those situations where it's probably best to just hold back, even if the feelings are really intense.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Our source mentions a few of those timing traps.
Okay.
Like saying it too early in the relationship.
Yeah. Yes. The early stages of a relationship, they're often fueled by those really intense emotions. Infatuation can feel a lot like love, and it's easy to get swept away in all of that.
Yeah.
But giving the relationship time to breathe, to see how those feelings actually evolve beyond the initial spark, is crucial.
Right. And I think it's so natural to want to just shout your feelings from the rooftops when you're excited about someone.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
But the source makes a really good point. Declaring love prematurely can actually scare someone off.
Absolutely. It can create pressure and expectations that the other person simply isn't ready for. It's like jumping ahead a few chapters in the book. You might miss some vital plot points along the way.
Well, that's such a good analogy.
Bang.
It's like let the story unfold naturally.
Exactly.
And another timing trap our source mentions is saying, I love you under pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you feel obligated to say it back, even if you're not quite there yet.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have felt that pressure, whether it's because their partner said it first, or
Yeah.
maybe there's a sense that it's just expected at a certain stage in the relationship.
Right.
But saying it under duress ultimately undermines the sincerity of those words.
Yeah.
It can even lead to resentment later down the line.
So what do you do if you find yourself in that situation? Like if your partner says, I love you, but you're just not ready to reciprocate.
That's where open and honest communication is just so vital.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to acknowledge their feelings.
Like how?
Like you can say something like, thank you for sharing that with me. It means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But also to express where you're at in that moment.
So like, I care about you deeply, but I need a little more time to process my own feelings.
Exactly. It's about being truthful without shutting them down or dismissing their emotions.
Yeah. Honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is probably the best policy in that situation.
Absolutely.
It prevents those misunderstandings and sets a healthy foundation for communication moving forward. And, this whole conversation reminds me of a time when
Oh, yeah.
well, actually, you know what?
What?
We're running a little short on time here, so we're going to have to save that story for the next part.
Oh, man. A cliffhanger.
I know.
Okay, well, everybody stay tuned because we will be right back after a short break.
To continue this deep dive into saying, I love you.
Yeah, honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is definitely the best way to go.
For sure.
It lets both people be on the same page, even if you know those pages are turning at different speeds.
Yeah.
And our source also cautions against saying, I love you during highly emotional moments.
Oh, yeah. Those times when everything just feels supercharged, whether it's good or bad.
Imagine like a whirlwind romance, right? Every date feels magical and you're constantly discovering new things about each other and those feel-good hormones are like surging.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to mistake that intensity for lasting love.
It's like that saying, you can't build a house on a foundation of sand.
Right.
You need something solid to actually support it, and that takes time.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, those intense negative emotions,
Right, yeah.
they can also cloud our judgment.
For sure.
Like during a heated argument, for example, you might just blurt out, I love you, as a way to kind of diffuse the tension or even try to win the fight.
Or maybe even out of fear of losing the person.
Oh, absolutely.
I better say this before they walk out the door.
Exactly. But those emotionally charged pronouncements, they often don't reflect our true feelings.
Right.
They're more about the situation at hand than the actual depth of the relationship.
So it sounds like timing is all about taking a step back,
Yeah.
checking in with yourself, and making sure that those words are coming from a place of genuine clarity and intention.
Absolutely. It's about making a conscious choice, not a reactive one. And speaking of intention, our source offers some fantastic advice on how to actually say, I love you in a way that feels authentic and meaningful.
Okay.
One thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on keeping it simple.
I love that.
It's so tempting to go over the top, you
Oh, yeah.
know, especially in our social media-driven world where everything has to be extra.
Right.
But sometimes the most powerful expressions of love are the quietest ones.
Totally.
It's not about grand gestures or trying to orchestrate some like picture-perfect moment. It's about connecting heart to heart
Yeah.
with vulnerability and sincerity.
I love that. And the source also suggests, like, making it about the other person,
Oh, yeah.
focusing on how they make you feel rather than just stating, I love you, as a blanket statement.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It transforms those three little words into a beautiful expression of gratitude and appreciation.
Right.
It's about taking the time to tell them what you cherish about them, the unique ways they enrich your life, how they make you feel seen and understood.
It's like instead of saying, I love you, you're saying, here's why you matter to me.
Yeah.
Here's how you've touched my heart.
Exactly. It's about specificity, about painting a picture with your words, about revealing the depth of your feelings and how those feelings are directly tied to the other person.
And it makes it so much more personal and meaningful. But even with all the right signs and the perfect timing, putting yourself out there emotionally is never easy.
It's definitely not.
What advice does our source offer for navigating that vulnerability, especially when there's always a chance of rejection?
Well, the source really emphasizes that saying I love you shouldn't feel like a transaction,
Okay.
like where you're expecting an immediate return on your emotional investment.
So no scorekeeping or waiting with bated breath for them to say it back.
Right. It's about accepting that you can only control your own actions and feelings, not someone else's.
Right.
And that takes a lot of courage and self-awareness.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
Oh, I love that one.
But sometimes those two things don't happen simultaneously, and that's okay.
That's a beautiful quote, and it speaks to the truth that love unfolds on its own timeline.
Yeah.
Sometimes those timelines sync up perfectly, and sometimes they just don't.
But even if someone isn't ready to say, I love you back, it doesn't invalidate your feelings or
No.
diminish the importance of your emotional honesty.
Absolutely, and that's where self-compassion comes in. It's about recognizing that you took a risk, you put your heart out there, and that takes strength regardless of the outcome.
I think we often underestimate how much courage it takes to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to love. We're conditioned to protect ourselves from getting hurt,
Right.
but they can also prevent us from experiencing like the deepest forms of connection.
That's so true. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but it's actually a superpower.
Totally.
It allows us to connect with others on a deeper level, to build trust, and to experience love in its rawest form.
So how can our listeners cultivate more of that vulnerability in their own lives, even if it feels scary?
I think it starts with self-awareness,
Okay.
understanding your own emotional patterns, your fears, and the ways you might be holding yourself back.
It's like giving yourself permission to feel those feelings,
Yeah.
even the uncomfortable ones,
Yes.
without judgment.
Exactly. And recognizing that vulnerability isn't about being weak or oversharing. It's
Yeah.
about being authentic, about letting people see your true self and trusting that the right people will embrace you for who you are.
And that, I think, is the foundation of any truly meaningful relationship.
Absolutely. When you feel safe to be vulnerable with someone, to express your needs and desires without fear of judgment, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
That's when true intimacy can flourish.
So before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you listening.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground in this episode, from the psychological nuances of saying I love you to the importance of timing vulnerability and authentic communication.
It's been a rich and layered conversation, and we appreciate you joining us on this journey of exploration.
And we would love to hear from you.
Yes, please.
Have you ever struggled with the timing of saying I love you? What are your thoughts on navigating those moments of vulnerability and potential rejection? Share your experiences in the comments below. We're all in this together.
We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive into the world of I love you.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore some final thoughts and takeaways that you could apply to your own relationships. Welcome back to Healing Growth. We've been on quite a journey today, exploring this multifaceted world of saying, I love you. It's amazing how much there is to unpack beyond just those 3 little words.
It really makes you think about the weight that they carry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, in a world that's so saturated with language, why do those 3 words still hold so much power?
That is a great question. And I think it really speaks to our fundamental human need for connection,
Right.
for belonging, for that deep sense of being seen and loved for who we truly are.
Absolutely. And as we've discussed, it's not just about the words themselves.
Right.
It's about the intention, the vulnerability, and the commitment behind them. It's about choosing to love someone day after day, even when it's hard.
Yeah, and our source really emphasized that saying, I love you, shouldn't feel like a finish line. It's more like a stepping stone, a transition into a deeper level of connection and intimacy.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. And like any new chapter, it comes with its own set of challenges and opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with? What's the one thing you hope they take away from this conversation?
If I had just one takeaway, it would be this. Be mindful of your own definition of love. What does it truly mean to you? What qualities are non-negotiable in a partner who shares those words with you?
Right.
Taking the time to reflect on these questions will help you navigate the complexities of love with more intentionality and clarity.
That's such a powerful reminder, because love isn't one size fits all, right? It's a deeply personal experience shaped by our individual values, experiences, and desires.
Exactly. And once you have a clearer understanding of what love means to you, don't be afraid to express it authentically.
Yeah.
Whether it's through words, actions, or simply your presence, let your love shine through in the way that feels true to you.
I love that it's about embracing vulnerability, being honest with ourselves and our partners, and trusting that the right people will meet us where we are.
Beautifully said. And for those of you out there who are still searching for that special connection,
Remember that you are worthy of love just as you are. Keep your heart open, keep exploring, and trust that love will find its way to you.
that's such a hopeful message. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of I love you.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel empowered to navigate your own relationships with more clarity and intention.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe to Healing Growth for more relationship insights.
Yes.
And share your own experiences in the comments below. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep those hearts open, keep those conversations flowing, and keep growing.